Oh, good morning. I'd like to call the October meeting of the State Transportation Board to order. Right now, let's start with our invocation. If Jeff, please do that. Jeff Lewis. Oh, hi, Mr. Brown.
Sure. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we pause this time, Father, to lift you up and reflect on your good name, and thank you for all the blessings you bestow on us and that you are yet to bestow on us. Father, we just thank you for this time we can gather. We ask your continued blessings on this department and all of our people throughout the state. And Lord, just be with us when we leave this meeting, and we'll go out and do things according to your will. We lift this up in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll have a roll call.
District 1, Ann Purcell. District 2, Johnny Floyd. District 3, Russ Carricker.
Here.
District 4, Robert Brown. District 5, Stacy Keats.
Present.
District 6, Kevin Abel.
Here.
District 7, Rudy Bowen.
Here.
District 8, Tim Golden.
Here.
District 9, Emily Dunn.
Here.
District 10, Jamie Boswell.
Here.
District 11, Jeff Lewis.
Here.
District 12, Greg Morris. District 13, Dana Lemon. District 14, Jerry Sheeran.
Okay. Well, thank you again for being here today. We've almost got a full house, and that is very exciting. I love to see people in person. So next month, I hope that we will be back all in person. So I think it's time. At this time, we need to approve the minutes from the September board meeting. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have Albert Shelby come. He's going to report on our projects for the October letting.
So good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner, and members of the board. I'm here to present the projects the department is proposing to advertise for the November 2021 letting. Before we present November, here are the FY 2022 results. We have let a total of 69 projects in FY 2022. This chart shows the number of projects by improvement type. The value of these 69 projects is approximately $318 million through the September 2021 bid awards, with 67 GDOT let projects worth approximately $314 million and 2 local let projects worth $450,000. This chart shows a dollar amount distribution by improvement type, with maintenance, bridge, and road projects making up the bulk of these types. Here are the results of the September 2021 letting. Of the 22 GDOT let contracts presented to the board, 21 were awarded and 1 was rejected from the letting. Now I'm going to discuss the projects in the November 2021 letting. We have a total of 13 projects with 12 GDOT projects and 1 local let. The next 2 slides list those 13 projects arranged by Congressional District. As you can see with this slide, we are letting a variety of projects throughout the state to address bridge, capacity, and maintenance issues. The first highlighted project is the replacement of the structurally deficient bridge on State Route 376 over Allapahuchee River. The existing bridge was constructed in 1956, 65 years ago. And here's a ground view of that bridge to be replaced. The next highlighted project will resurface State Route 4, which is also State Route 520, from the Atkinson County line to west of Anita Street for 19.64 miles. This section was last repaved in 2005, 16 years ago, and is an example of our continued commitment to maintaining our existing infrastructure. This next project will resurface State Route 520 US 82 from the Worth-Tift County line to Salem Church Road in Tift County for 6.57 miles. This section was last repaved in 2006, 15 years ago. The final highlighted project will resurface State Route 121 and State Route 121 bypass from Peachtree Street to the Richmond County line for 7.56 miles. This section was last repaved in 2004, 17 years ago. The following design build projects will be advertised in November of 2021. The actual let dates will be further out, but we are advertising them early to receive an abundance of quality bids. Here are the two projects that will be advertised. The first of these is the State Route 400 Phase 1 design build projects that will consist of the replacement of 3 overpass bridges along State Route 400. The bridge replacements include the Pitts Road Bridge over State Route 400, the Roberts Drive Bridge over State Route 400, and the Kimball Road Bridge over State Route 400. These bridges will support the addition of future express lanes, which will occur in Phase 2 of this corridor. The next design build project includes the addition of the 12-foot auxiliary lane along I-285 westbound between Roswell Road and Riverside Drive. The project will also include the Mount Vernon Highway Bridge replacement over I-285 and the I-285 bridge widening over Long Island Drive to accommodate the auxiliary lane. So we have 13 projects proposed for the November 2021 letting. This chart shows the dollar amount, shows the chart by distribution by improvement type. The estimate of the projects in the November 2021 letting is approximately $75.7 million. This chart shows the dollar amount distribution by improvement type. I now ask for your consideration for approval of the proposed projects presented for the November 2021 letting.
Do we have a motion to approve the October letting? Do we have?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or questions for Mr. Shelby? Okay, if none, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Shelby.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to invite up Mac Markham, our Deputy Director of Planning, to look at revisions to the construction work program.
Good morning, Madam Chair,
Good
Commissioner,
morning.
members of the board. It's a pleasure to come to you this morning to bring you 2 sets of proposed revisions to the construction work program. One of them is going to be for your approval. It was one that I brought to you last month for review, and it's coming before you for approval. And then an additional 7 that I'm going to bring to you are for your review this month, and we'll come back to you next month for approval. So I'll start with those. These first 7 that you see here, 6 of the first 7 are State Route 3, US 19, this Northside Drive. It's actually 6 segments of one larger project along Northside Drive that came as a result of a Northside Drive corridor study led by our Office of Program Delivery. This was a program delivery in coordination with various stakeholders and subject matter experts, included public comment and review and traffic analysis. The overall purpose of these projects is to reduce crash frequency and severity, increase multimodal safety, and improve service and operations along the heavily traveled Northside Drive corridor. The last project on this list is a drainage improvement project, a culvert replacement along State Route 120 in Gwinnett County, Congressional District 7. This project was recommended by the District 1 office for inclusion to improve drainage along the corridor. So as I said, these are here for your review this month, and we'll come back for approval or action at the next month. Be happy to take any questions on these that you guys may have.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And so the next one, the one I said, this one is for board action. I brought this to you last month. This is State Route 4 in Ware County. It's a project to replace a structurally deficient bridge. It is recommended for addition into the program. Madam Chair, this would come to you for action.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the revision to the construction work program? Do you have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Comments? If none, all in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now I think we'll ask Carroll Comer to come up to look at a board rule.
Let's see. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner. We are here this morning to request favorable action on the board to open the rulemaking process as they relate to our rules and regulations for licensing of certain open to the public airports. During the 2021 legislative session, the legislature amended the law that is in the state statutes relative to airport licensing. And so that is the trigger for us to update that change into our rules and regulations, which, define how we carry out compliance with that statute. The airport licensing rules and regulations apply to 97 open to the public airports, your general aviation airports. 95 of those are publicly owned public use airports, and 2 of those are privately owned private use airports. The airport licensing regulations do not apply to commercial service airports. FAA has a robust safety certification program for air carrier airports, so they are excluded from this law and the rules and regulations. The amendment that was made to the to the state statute, again, in 2021, continues to make it. I'm sorry. Sorry, Russell, I wasn't picking up on the cue there. The change in the 2021 law continues to make it unlawful to operate an airport without a valid airport license, and it allows the department to issue a cease and desist order to anyone operating an airport without a license, and also provides for a civil penalty not to exceed $1,000 a day for violations of the cease and desist order. Let's see, I think I forgot to say, the law was originally enacted in 1979, and the change in 2021 was the first change that's been made to it in a little over 40 years. And so we haven't updated the rules and regulations in quite some time. So we took this opportunity while we were updating the rules to reflect the 2021 change in the law to also make some minor administrative changes. And some of those are to correct some of the definitions. We have in the current rule a reference to licenses and permits. And these are licenses, so we're going to remove the word permit. And we are also going to clarify some definitions for persons, runway object-free areas, obstruction, and runway primary surfaces. We also felt like this was a good opportunity to modify one of our state obstruction-free approach surfaces so that it doesn't exceed the federal approach surface standards. And I'll give you a picture of this. So, picture's worth 1,000 words. On the left is, in our licensing criteria, all airports have to have an obstruction-free approach surface to the runway end. And it's interesting to note, FAA also has clear approach surface requirements as well. And in one of our measurements, our state surface actually exceeds the requirements of the federal surface. And the purpose for the licensing requirements and obstruction-free approach surfaces is to ensure a minimum level of safe operations at the airport during visual weather conditions. And for this particular runway length, the federal standard for obstruction-free approach surfaces during IFR weather conditions, when it's cloudy, rainy, can't see very well. Our state standard for visual actually exceeds the federal standard for IFR. So we are requesting a small modification in that surface. You can see that first green trapezoid. We're going to shrink it down just a little bit to make it consistent with the federal. So if you can meet the federal standards, you should be able to meet our state standards. So that's just a minor modification. We're also going to like to add a clarifying reference to grounding cables as they relate to aircraft fueling operations, that they must be present. And then also in the original law, but left out of our original rules, was a reference to that we will not deny an airport license to an airport operator who did not meet certain geometric standards that were put in place in 1979. So we have 17 airports that are grandfathered into the licensing for geometric standards, and those are potentially the distance between the center line of the runway and the center line of the taxiway, maybe the taxiway width, runway width, or possibly hold bar markings from a taxiway before you taxi onto the runway. And so we're not changing that. It's always been in the law. We've just never listed it in the rule. So we're bringing that forward. And as I mentioned earlier, the change in allowing the department to issue a cease and desist order for anyone operating without an airport license, and also to provide for the civil penalties. And then we are going to delete the very last section, 672-9.05, where we talk about exemptions to the licensing rule. That was where we talk about air carrier airports are exempted, but we actually included that in the definitions that we updated, so we were able to remove that section. So it's pretty minor modifications. We have, so far, for our public and industry engagement relative to these proposed changes, we have reached out and provided a copy of the proposed changes to all the airport owners and airport managers at the 97 affected airports. We have also disseminated the information to 2 industry groups, the Georgia Airports Association and the American Council of Engineering Companies, ACEC, their aviation subcommittee. We will also plan to host a webinar on October 27th to present the proposed changes and take questions from any interested parties. And we will also, with your favorable consideration today, post on our website this afternoon a copy of the proposed changes with a portal for accepting public comment. And so with that, Madam Chairman, we would request the board give favorable consideration to open the rulemaking process and issue a resolution to provide notice of your intent to amend the rules. Should you choose to do so, which we hope you will, our public comment period would end on November 22nd. And barring any substantive comments or need for additional changes, we would anticipate that hopefully you would be able to adopt the rules at your December 9th meeting.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
Quick
Lewis?
question. Thank you. In light of the law as it relates to the licensing or non-licensing and the new penalties involved, has that been an issue or a problem as a result of why they're changing this?
Certainly in our aviation program and our transit program, the federal programs that we administer, we are certainly tasked by on the federal government side of the house with monitoring and compelling and ensuring compliance with the federal regulations. And so certainly on the federal side of the house, there are a lot of tools in the toolbox to help us do that. As far as it relates on the state side, we still have that same requirement with our airport. We monitor that to compel compliance and ensure people are complying. And in reviewing that law, we recognize that the $100 fine was not a tool in the toolbox that was helpful in compelling compliance. But we did 2 years ago have one airport, a privately owned public use airport that was not licensed.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, do we have a motion to open the board rule 672-9, as described by Ms. Comer. Do we have a second? Second. Any other questions or comments? It's a lot of information, a lot of updates. Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Nicholas Fields, our State Utilities Administrator, to come and talk to us about Board Rule 672-11-04.
Want to move this back to?
Yes.
All right, well, good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner, members of the board. Thanks for allowing me to speak today regarding the request to open for comment on amendment to Department Rule 672-11. First, a reminder that our intent is to streamline and modernize, recognizing the changes to the telecom industry that have occurred over the past 30-plus years. As a brief recap, the current rule was adopted by the board on August 19th, 2021, and became effective September 13th, 2021. I was here before you at last month's board meeting to request an amendment to the rule for municipal authorities be open for comment on September 17th, 2021. And now, board action is needed to approve the amendment for municipal authorities.
Do we have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So, as a reminder, state law requires payment to a municipal authority by a telephone company where there are no retail end users within the boundary of the municipal authority be determined in accordance with the department's rules. As another reminder, this particular amendment includes language that fees set forth in the current rule will not become effective until July 1st, 2022. Prior to July 1st, 2022, the old rates for municipalities will apply. There's been ongoing outreach and informal conversations with GMA and various communication providers. We had 4 entities provide comments. 2 were supportive, 1 raised concern of statutory authority, and 1 raised concern of statutory authority and cost. After review, these comments don't give us concern. And now, Madam Chair, we're seeking favorable action to approve the amendment to Department Rule 672-11. And I'll take any questions you have at this time.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve Board Rule 672-11 for municipal authorities as presented? Do you have a second? Any other questions, comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to hear about our I-85 Planning and Environmental Linkages Initiative. Kathy, our Assistant Director for Strategic and Systems Planning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner McMurray. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you with an update on the Planning and Environmental Linkages Initiative for Interstate 85. I'm excited to be here with you today to tell you more about the study. This morning, my goal is to provide an overview of what the planning and environmental linkages means and why we're doing it, give you some background on the I-85 corridor and why it was selected as our first Pell initiative in the state, and provide an update on this ongoing Pell initiative. Planning and Environmental Linkages, or PEL process, was established by Federal Highway Administration. Its primary purpose is to streamline the plan development process by integrating more components of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, into the planning process. So what's the benefit? PEL aims to get the environmental experts involved from the very beginning, to give them a chance not only to understand what's going on from the start, but also to have a chance to provide their input. It also facilitates consensus on project decisions. During the traditional process, it's really not uncommon for some decisions to be made at the planning phase and then revisited, retested, and redone during environmental or NEPA phase. And with Pell, our goal is to gain that consensus before we even decide which projects to pursue. You can see many benefits that stem from this approach. More robust public involvement, well-informed decision-making earlier in the plan development process, time savings, as well as cost savings. It's important to note that Pell, or Planning and Environmental Linkages, is not a result or a separate report, but it's something that's an embedded enhancement into that planning process. Georgia Georgia's first Pell study is on the I-85 corridor from roughly I-285 to I-985. And this slide reflects some of the reasons why it's being selected. It may not be surprising to hear that the I-85 study corridor is one of the busiest interstates in Georgia. The corridor has over 300,000 vehicles traveling through the study area every day, and it continues to grow. For people who use the corridor, travel time reliability is an important factor that affects commerce and quality of life. Commuters on I-85 currently need to plan for an additional 10 to 30 minutes of travel time to ensure that they arrive to their destinations on time. I-85 is not just used by travelers who work inside the perimeter. In fact, nearly a third of people using I-85 have destinations that are within 2 exits of where they started. It's also a critical corridor for freight mobility in the southeastern United States. Commercial vehicles make up 16% of the traffic on I-85 north of 316 and more than 11% between State Route 316 and I-285. In this current climate of next day or even same day delivery expectations, freight mobility and reliability is critical to commerce. And nearly a third of drivers are traveling locally within the corridor, as I mentioned, more than 30% within just 2 exits of where they started. The I-85 study aims to recommend a series of projects that will reduce congestion, enhance traffic operations, and improve safety within this 18-mile corridor. In addition, Gwinnett County is a 50-50 partner with the department, and they're uniquely positioned to assist with implementation of some of the initiatives that will come out of this process that we would otherwise be unable to accomplish. Before engaging the public, Gwinnett County and Georgia DOT engaged other stakeholders affected by the study. This slide shows just a fraction of the many stakeholders we have had the privilege of discussing the project with throughout the last couple of years. As you can see here, stakeholders for this study include representatives from all levels of government agencies and community improvement districts. These business and community groups have been extremely informative in sharing their needs and expectations for the corridor. Each stakeholder group is providing diverse experience, insight, and institutional knowledge to the study process. At the onset of the I-85 Pell study, the project stakeholders helped craft a vision for the I-85 corridor. And they agreed on the goals stated here to achieve that vision. The vision for the corridor is to provide a safe, reliable interstate travel for people and goods as part of a connected, efficient transportation network while creating value for surrounding communities. As you can see on the left side, the goals developed for this project in the corridor are consistent with the department's goals and the governor's goals that are aligned with the statewide strategic plan that you approved earlier this year. The goals and the purpose and need for the project were used during each tier of the screening process that I'll describe later to make decisions about which projects would advance. Public involvement, as I mentioned, is a very important component of the Pell process, and we conducted a great deal of outreach and engagement with the public in addition to the public agencies previously mentioned. Our first major outreach event was held in the second quarter of 2019 with that visioning meeting I mentioned, and then shortly after, the study kicked off. The study team met with a small group of stakeholders to gather their feedback and further develop those goals. And then the public outreach occurred between 2019 and early 2020, including a series of public information open house meetings, community events, and an online survey. The events were heavily publicized throughout the project area through direct outreach and social media, and also included what I believe was the department's first billboard rental. Public engagement materials were translated into 4 languages: English, Spanish, Korean, and Vietnamese, which are the most widely spoken languages in Gwinnett County. The results of the outreach were highly successful. More than 2,500 people responded to the survey, and we reached over 900 individuals during in-person meetings and community events. The team shared the results of the public meetings and reviewed preliminary results of the Tier 1 screening with the stakeholders in late 2020, and then shared those results with the public. These were the alternatives in the Phase 1 public outreach. They initially screened all the ideas, over 1,000 of those, for fatal flaws like being too far away from the study area, or ideas that were not aligned with the project's stated goals and vision. The ideas that passed the screening were then consolidated into alternatives that advanced to the screening process, and they were categorized as either managed lane system improvements, freeway and interchange improvements, arterial improvements, multimodal options, policy changes, and smart infrastructure, or add-on improvements such as shoulder widening, upgrading signs and pavement markings, or bridge replacements. Achieving the vision for I-85 that I shared earlier is going to require a package of projects from all of these categories, each of which will achieve specific goals in unique ways. When the screening process has been completed, or when it was completed in that first phase, we were ready to go on to the second phase of public involvement. In that managed lane systems category, these are examples of what was taken to the public as part of Phase 2. Consistent with the approved board resolution, any new capacity on I-85 would be managed. That managed lane could include HOV lanes, express lanes, hot lanes, commercial vehicle lanes, and the like. We're evaluating all of those options to determine the best way to increase capacity on the corridor. These typical sections were presented, but it's also important to note that the field conditions may dictate that some of these lanes be elevated. This doesn't necessarily represent the footprint of the project. They could be elevated, they could be in the median as shown, they could be on one side or the other. What we know is that any managed lane solution will have to be well coordinated with the solutions that are being designed along I-285 currently. The interface between those two systems near Spaghetti Junction will be critical to success, and all possible access locations are being evaluated to find the best way for vehicles and buses to get in and out of the system throughout the corridor. Multimodal options were also represented in one of the virtual public meeting rooms because this is an area that was very important to the stakeholders who responded to our surveys and attended our meetings. This slide depicts the potential transit facilities that could support I-85 operations by decreasing the number of single occupant vehicles on the freeway, such as high capacity transit, bus rapid transit, and unique transit transfer points like inline stations. All these options would be evaluated during the next phase of the study. That outreach occurred between August 9th and September 10th of this year, including a live presentation and question and answer session on August 26th. During the public meeting period, the public was invited to the study's website. There they could learn about all the alternatives that advanced or which ones didn't. And after reviewing the room materials, participate in a MetroQuest survey and provide their feedback. As you can see on the chart, we received comments related to a variety of areas. The trending topics were that nearly a third of people are interested in public transit improvements, including rail, bus rapid transit, and arterial bus routes. Highway and arterial improvements received 25% of the comments, focused mainly on collector distributor lanes, certain interchange improvements, and dedicated access to the I-285 managed lanes. 11% of the comments were related to the managed lanes themselves, and they highly supported the need for transit to use those lanes and discussions around equity and tolling costs. The next phase of the study will be certainly focused on those areas. This kind of gives an overview of those of the screening process. The goal setting being the tip of the cone there. We're using a 3-tiered evaluation system to screen and develop alternatives that began with that generation of over 1,000 ideas that were evaluated. It was screened down to 261 alternatives in Tier 1, and after more refinement and analysis, the numbers now narrowed down to 161 alternatives in Tier 2. The tiers, like I said, were evaluated using performance measures to determine which ones most met the needs and goals of the program and how well they would work together. The study team will host one additional round of public outreach in the future as the study moves along and reveals more in-depth insights from our further analysis. And all this will culminate in a recommendation of a package of projects that can be incorporated into the construction work program. And for those of you who didn't have an opportunity to take a look at all of our partners, on the first time I slid by this slide, I'll let it rest there while I answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Mr. Abel?
Thanks, Kathy. The options that relate to transit, to the extent that they make it through the funnel, how does that fit in relative to what GDOT can do in the construction work program?
Sure. So with regard to the transit stations themselves, inline stations that may need to be a part of or facilitated by the project design, that would be the department's primary role in that. Coordination with CERTA, obviously, about usage, but Gwinnett County as the partner in this, as a 50-50 and partner in this, would be the operator of, one of the operators of that transit system.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bowen?
Thank you, Kathy, for this. I've been wondering about this, when this was going to have some information on this, but what is the focus really about capacity, or are you doing focuses? I know you're doing focuses on all types of transportation. You're additional capacity as well as transit rail, as you said, and I'm sure the bus lane rapid transit and those type things, and also you know, how it will be distributed along the corridor in the connection of the other major arterials, whether it be 316 as well as Ronald Reagan Parkway, 985, and Jimmy Carter. And so all that's incorporated into the study of the capacity as well as the transit and what type of transit they recommend.
Yes, sir. The network as a whole is being evaluated, and to the extent that a lot of the routes that you named, in addition to Satellite Boulevard and Jimmy Carter, have the opportunity to potentially carry more traffic than they currently do, and have a large impact on the route selection that people make. The tie-in with transit is evident to us just based on the numbers that CERTA has. Only 2% of the vehicles on I-85 are currently more than single occupant or known to be more than single occupant vehicles, but they move nearly 20% of the people through that corridor. So it can really have an impact on moving a lot more people if we can make those transit enhancements more robust and meet our customers' needs.
And you also, I'm sure, take it in consideration as you look at the growth up 85. Did also the many distribution points are going up 85, and what the impact and growth potential is in that corridor.
Absolutely, and I think the insights that the Community Improvement District partners that we have and what they're expecting to come down the pike is really crucial to that, providing that knowledge to us. They're very important partners in this process.
That's very good. I'm glad to see this moving in the direction it is, since it's in my district. So it's quite an interesting corridor.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? I'll comment. I'm just really impressed with how you've had extensive outreach to people and using a billboard for the first time, but also just identifying so many stakeholders. And even though it goes straight through Mr. Bowen's district, it leads right into mine. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, great. Before I go, I want to say the credit goes not to me, but to Megan Weiss and Phil Peavy and Charles Robinson, the Arcadis team, and Christina Pastor, our consultant partners who have really made this a reality, and they've done an outstanding job bringing this study to fruition.
Well, we thank them and appreciate them as well, but it's very exciting to see the progress, and I can't wait to see how it turns out.
I've got one other question. So
Okay.
it's being 2023, quarter 3 is when the final study is revealed?
Yes, sir. That'll be when we have a list of projects that we believe will return the best combination together for the mobility, and then we will be able to program those into the construction work program, develop detailed cost estimates and that kind of thing.
Thank you. That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for a good report and for your good work. Okay, at this time, we'll bring our right-of-way administrator, Troy Hill, up for a property management update.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and members of the board and the commissioner. I'm Troy Hill, I'm right-of-way administrator. I'll be presenting on our property management unit today. Some of the items we'll go over, let me catch. Some of the items we'll go over today are surplus properties. What are they? How are they created? Some of the surplus property objectives and goals we have. Are some of our disposal processes, our application process, how we receive them and process them, as well as we have a marketing program for our properties. We'll go over our lease program, some of the codes, who can lease, and some of the uses they can lease for. Also, we'll go over some of our policies and procedures, some of our state and federal codes, our right-of-way manual, and some policy changes we have. And we'll also go over our fiscal year 21 totals, 22 totals, total sales and leases. And we've got a new state property manager. We combined our surplus and demolition units into one unit, and we have a new manager. We'll introduce him. Okay, what are surplus properties? Basically, they're properties that GDOT owns that we do not need for transportation purposes, and there's various properties. They're created various ways. Most of them are acquisitions from properties that leave the remainder at a reduced size or value. So we offer to purchase that property. Most of our properties are that way. And this can be due to the size or access impacts, access rights, topo changes where you can't physically get a drive in. So we offer to buy those properties from the owners, and they turn into surplus properties. Others are wetland parcels where we bought for wetland credits. Once those credits are used and we no longer need them, we can surplus those properties and sell them, or some go to DNR and other agencies for wildlife management areas and that sort of thing. And others are abandoned state routes where we've built a bypass or no longer use the road, so we have those properties we can, or surplus as well. And the website is listed there. It takes you to our webpage that shows all the properties that are in inventory. The next page is a screenshot of that webpage. And some of the objectives, of course, the main objective is to create revenue that goes right back into the capital improvement program. Yes, old slide, if that's okay. Another objective is get the properties back on the tax digest for local communities to create tax revenue for them. Also, it reduces their maintenance and oversight of the properties, mowing the properties, keep them clean. We have trespassing issues where people camp, hunt, and fish on the properties. And also, the worst part is dumping. People dump their stuff there, so helps reduce that. Our process is basically, there's two processes we handle surplus properties. One is we receive applications from interested parties. The other way is we proactively market these properties. Under the application method, we receive requests a variety of ways: phone calls, texts, emails, etc. Once we receive a request for an application, we go through an internal review process where we vet it through various GDOT offices to make sure environmentally we can sell it, or if there's a transportation need in the future, whether it be a road or some other use. Some districts need storage areas or maintenance facilities. So we go through an internal review. Once it's approved, we can surplus. We'll go an evaluation process. Depending on the size and value of the property, we might do an independent appraisal. Other cases, we can do an in-house estimate. Just depends on the type of property. And it kind of gets tricky right here. Once we approve, we can sell it, and we have a value. Per the state code, if we've owned it less than 30 years, we have to go back to the original owner we purchased it from, unless there was a waiver of the first right of refusal. Deeds pre-90 did not contain that waiver. They had the right of first refusal. So if it's less than 30 years and they have that, we have to go back to them. If there's a waiver, we don't. But once we figure all that out, and either the owner doesn't want it or we didn't have to contact him, we can go to the bid process, and we advertise these properties through legal ads. Mostly the requester, we typically send him a copy of the bid package, as well as any adjacent owners that might be interested in the property. A public request, we get a lot of these from local municipalities. As long as it's for a public use, transportation, parks, sometimes buildings, we can talk to them without going through the bid process. But it depends on the property use and what they need it for. We do give them easements sometimes, donate easements if it's a utility or some use like that. But it just depends on what but the point there is, if it's a public request for public use, we don't have to bid it. And there's a link here to our application page. That is a screenshot of the application. I mentioned the marketing method. We currently have a consultant in place that has a contract to proactively market these properties, and they have a team that consists of all the players needed, anywhere from brokers, appraisers, environmentalists, designers, surveyors, so they can do the title, survey, value, and market, and the closing. They advertise these properties through legal ads. Consultant has a site that he uses, as well as the broker sites, the real estate brokers. And we also have a GDOT website, and there's a link to that. And here's a screenshot of that site. Okay, leases. We do lease property, but it's very limited, and it's covered under Georgia Code 32-7-5. If the requester is the original owner or a tenant, we don't have to bid that out. We can lease it to them at a fair market value. If it's an adjacent owner that wants it, we can lease it to them, but it's only for parking purposes. All other requests have to be a public bid process, and all properties have to be leased at fair market value rent. And the next slide is just the general codes and stuff that we follow under surplus property process. Georgia Code 32-74, CFR, the Federal Code CFR 23, Part 710, and the right-of-way manual, which is on our internal website, and external, Chapter 16 goes over internal policies and procedures for sales and leases of properties. We've had a few recent policy changes which have helped us, which one of them is a code change. We can now negotiate less than the fair market value within a 15% range. We used to negotiate, have to stick to the appraised value, so that gives us a little bit more room to sell these. We've also changed some of our appraisal methodologies, gives our appraisers a little more flexibility on appraising these properties. And the next slide is just the total of our sales. You can see fiscal year 21, we sold 99 properties, $3,039,730 revenue. To date of fiscal 22, we sold 22 properties, totaling $1,167,005. We've got 2 contracts which we hope close over $2 million for this fiscal year 22. We have 50 current leases, and they're mostly yearly leases, and the total annual revenue is $140,870. And as I mentioned, we've got a new state property manager, Jay Strange. He started about 2 weeks ago, and here's his contact information. Is there any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Lewis?
This is Jamie Boswell. I'd like to ask a question.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Boswell.
The length of time that it has to go back to the original owner, it takes a lot of work to sometimes even get back and find who they are, the heirs. Is there any way of what would be required to reduce the time of the 30-year period?
Like I said, most of our deeds, we're kind of getting into that 30-year period. So most of our deeds in the 90s have that waiver clause. So when they sign the remainder deed, they're waiving their rights. So we have very few instances where we're in that realm. But and like you said, some of these 50 deeds and 60s, it's very hard to find these people. So most cases, we can't find them, or they may have passed or something like that. But we have to attempt it. But I think we're getting to the part where
I didn't know if there was a way to put a waiver in or change it or what, but trying to go back 30 years and find the original owner or the heirs or whoever it might be, it does create some issues.
Yes, sir. We do have a waiver clause in our current deed. So when they sign that deed, they're waiving that right. So we're getting into past that 30 years now, so we probably won't have to worry about it as much in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. And Mr. Lewis, I believe you are next.
Thank you. On the part where you mentioned we dispose of property through a public request for public use, like to a municipality.
Yes, sir.
Once that property is transferred, how long must it remain public use? And forever?
Thank you. I failed to mention this. When we do that, we put a reversionary clause in that deed that if at any point in the future they fail to use it publicly, it comes to DOT. So there is a clause in all those quitclaim deeds. Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions?
I have.
Okay, Mr. Bowen?
I have one, thank you. Troy, I have a question on some of the, well, in my districts, for example, I know there's several properties that possibly have local use, you know, right now they're just out there. What I mean by local use is by governmental entities like the county or local cities, you know, have an interest possibly in those properties. And my question would be, are you going to notify, or how do we go about, you know, may overlook it, not know it's being sold, you know?
Yeah, I mean, typically from the local, we get the request through them.
Right.
They contact us directly
Okay.
if they're interested in a piece of property.
Well, I know there's a couple
Yeah.
that have been shown interest for future trails and other type, you know, entities. So I just want to be sure that at least communication is available, you know, prior to, but possibly it is. I mean, I'm just throwing that out
They
there.
just need to contact us and say, we're interested, and we've actually got two. There's one of them's a trailhead. We're doing a land swap with the county now for that, so
Okay.
that might be.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much. That's a very good report.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to have Eric Duff, our State Environmental Administrator, come and give us an environmental streamlining report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Transportation Board. Thank you, Commissioner, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Eric Duff. I'm the State Environmental Administrator here at GDOT. I've been with the department for 28 years. I'm an archaeologist by trade, so naturally I like old stuff. I like to go back in time. So I want to take you back in time about 14 years ago to 2007 and 2008. And I just want to kind of jog your memory. Beyonce was the #1 music artist at that time. The first iPhone came out, and then who could forget the 2008 Great Recession? But during that time in the media, this is what was being said about the Office of Environmental Services. Words like environmental process is more bureaucratic than sensible. Environmental process was broken. You know, at GDOT, we are at our best when we are faced with a challenge, but this challenge was a little different. It wasn't something that you could see. It wasn't something that you could feel. It was an internal challenge. And I think it was safe to say doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results was not going to rectify the situation. So I want to briefly talk about how we've changed over the years. We've invested in our staff. We've empowered our staff to make decisions. You know, if you want great things to happen, you've got to surround yourself with great people. And then we really focused on innovation as the centerpiece to reimagine what the Office of Environmental Services could be. Today, our staff sit on every environmental committee within TRB and AASHTO, so we are connected nationally within the transportation industry. But it's one thing to be connected, it's another thing to be engaged. If you want to shape how the environmental process is going to look like in the future, you have to have your voice be heard. And I think a perfect example of that was in 2020 when they began to revise the National Environmental Policy Act for the very first time in over 40 years. You know, we were a primary contributor to those discussions. We set a course to rebuild our relationships with our federal and state regulatory agencies. At the department, we're really proud. We probably have the largest, most qualified, most experienced environmental subject matter expert staff in the state of Georgia. So we've worked really, really hard to be seen as peers with our regulatory agencies. And I think, you know, those efforts have really culminated in GDOT's establishment of the Interagency Office of Environmental Quality. That office resides here at One Georgia Center. When it was established, it was the first of its kind office in the country. Our regulatory staff, they report to that office, and then they work hand in hand with our staff to ensure efficient agency coordination. I think if we probably had a vote, the consensus would be that environmental resources have traditionally been seen as the primary reason why transportation projects are delayed. You know, it doesn't matter if you work for
GDOT or if you work for a private consultant, nobody, and I mean nobody, likes to have the finger pointed at them. So we've worked really hard with our private consultants. We've really accepted and really taken into heart this concept of environmental community. So we work hard to deliver our portion of the work program, but we work hard to dispel the myth that, you know, if there's a transportation delay, well, that's got to be because of environmental, because that's not always the case. So today, this is what they're saying about the Office of Environmental Services. Transportation projects delivered with innovative and effective environmental stewardship. So I want to just talk real briefly again about some of our environmental streamlining initiatives that we have done. The first is an agreement that we have with our State Historic Preservation Office that has reduced the amount of area that we have to survey for simple traffic ops projects where we're going from span wires to mast arms. That particular agreement also had a considerable cost savings for the department, a very small change that had big results. So I want to show you two pictures, before and after pictures, okay? The before pictures, you can see the span wires there that really kind of dominate that intersection, and they also dominate that streetscape as well. And then the after pictures that have the context-sensitive design mast arms. So I would challenge anybody, what's more intrusive to that historic district? Is it the span wires or is it the mast arms? And I think everybody would agree, based on this picture, it's always going to be the span wires. Originally, our State Historic Preservation Office believed that the introduction of mast arms to historic districts were going to be seen as an adverse effect. So it took a team from Environmental Services as well as our Traffic Ops Office to really help re-engineer SHPO's thinking on what an adverse effect was. And so today, these projects almost are exclusively seen as no adverse effect. We updated our ecological local coordination procedures. The LCP had not been updated in probably about 20 years. So the LCP, the revised LCP, really helps us with compliance with the Clean Water Act. We signed a new Cultural Resources Section 106 programmatic agreement. That included a number of different agencies. It also included federally recognized tribal governments. When we signed that agreement, it was the first of its kind in the country. It's really helped our cultural resources studies. And so think cultural resources, archaeological resources, historic resources. It's really helped those studies be more consistent, more predictable. And then when our studies are predictable, our environmental process is efficient. Can anybody read what's on that sign? Well, I can't, and that's what the public saw at 55 miles per hour. And that's a sign advertising a public information open house. And so in early 2020, you know, we bit the bullet, we really embraced technology, and we came up with a proposal for FHWA to transition to a virtual PI, virtual public involvement platform, that also had cost savings for the department. FHWA concurred with that, and so I want you to pay real close attention to when we did this. We did this in February of 2020. So what happened right after that? The pandemic hit in earnest. And then what happened right after that? In-person meetings were a no-no. You could not get people together at all, let alone two people in the same room at that point. But we had already really transitioned to a virtual public involvement platform, and we didn't see any delays on our projects because we could not engage with the public. Now, we had a steep learning curve here, and we had to learn a lot in a very short period of time. We had an excellent partner in the Office of Communications that helped us along the way. Today, we are seen as a model across the country for virtual public involvement. We're reaching more people than we have ever reached, but surprisingly, we're getting fewer comments than we have ever gotten as well. And I think the primary reason for that is we're doing a much, much better job of telling the story about our transportation projects in layman's terms. You know, what are the existing conditions? You know, how is the proposed project going to improve the quality of life for the public? And then, you know, finally, what are the consequences if we do nothing at all? Those three items really resonate with the public. This slide really, I think, shows and demonstrates the department's commitment to continuous improvement. Originally, several years ago, it would take us 408 hours to do hotspot carbon monoxide analysis. Today, with our existing CO agreement, air assessments are handled by standard template language in our reports. 0 hours it takes now to do that same work. We no longer net bridges in compliance with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. Just a point of reference, migratory birds love to nest up underneath our bridges. And so prior to that, if we didn't have a bridge netted by March 1st, you couldn't do any construction from April to August. So I want you to take a look at that blackout period there. That's our primary construction season. And we would have contractors waiting to go to work, but they couldn't because the bridge was not netted. And so we now contract with APHIS, the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service. That's a mouthful. But their staff, they go out early in the season, they knock down all the old nests, and then they monitor these bridges throughout the year to ensure that new nests are not being built. Since we've gone with APHIS, we've seen no construction blackout periods at all on our projects. And we're estimating that we probably have saved the department $3.2 million over the span of that contract. A very small change that had really big benefits for the department. This year, we updated our joint coordination procedures. The JCP, very similar to the LCP, it had not been updated in probably over 20 years. The JCP is our really primary vehicle on how we comply with the Endangered Species Act. I didn't give you any pictures here, but I gave you two testimonials on people that had worked on the initiative. I think the first testimonial really kind of speaks to the progress that we have made with our regulatory agencies, because, you know, now they see themselves as a partner in the maintenance and improvement of our state transportation infrastructure. In FY21, the majority of our projects did not require FHWA approval, but we had a very busy year last year. We did more environmental assessments as well as more environmental impact statements than we have ever done. This slide does not include the number of reevaluations that we did as well. If you were to add that into this pie chart, we're probably looking at about 250, closer to 300 NEPA documents that we had to produce in FY21. And I just want to really touch briefly on something that we're working on in FY 2022. It's our wetland mitigation credit forecasting model. What we've done is we've taken the 10-year plan. We've really made an estimate of how many wetland and stream credits our projects in the 10-year plan are going to need in the future. And so what we're doing is we're working very hard to ensure that we're going to have credit availability to use on those projects. And just as a point of reference, if you can't get wetland or stream credits, you can't get your 404 permit. If you can't get your 404 permit, you can't let projects to construction. Very important, but I think we're ahead of the game here. So in closing, you know, I've painted a very rosy picture here, and I will say that, but I've been at this a very long time. Environmental resources are just as challenging today as they have ever been. But probably in the history of the department, we've really never had the tools or the processes in place to really meet that challenge. So with that, I'll open it up to anybody who has questions.
Any questions?
This is Jamie Boswell. Being in the real estate business, you can imagine what we deal with in trying to get approvals. And it takes forever, but it is quicker than it once was. So thank you for what you're doing, but anything you can do to speed up the process would be much appreciated by the real estate community, I can assure you.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell. And that's, hey, every day, that's what we do, try to streamline the processes.
Any other questions? Thank you for your report. It was very good. Okay, at this time, I'm going to be bringing up Mr. Grant Waldrop. He is actually one of my district engineers. I share him with Mr. Lewis. I think Mr. Lewis can testify that Grant is a huge help, and he answers the phone even on the weekends, every time we call.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, even on vacation.
I do. Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the board, and Commissioner for having me here today to provide an update on our activities in District 6. For those of you I haven't had the opportunity to work with yet, I'm Grant Waldrop, District Engineer in Northwest Georgia. I'm honored to lead a group of outstanding men and women who work to build, operate, maintain, and administer the state route system in District 6. Today, I'd like to share some of our accomplishments and our ongoing work. For a quick overview of what I would like to discuss, here's a high-level agenda. First, I want to go through an overview and update on the district and our staff, then step through kind of the life cycle of a roadway, going through the pre-construction, construction, maintenance, and operations of a roadway. So District 6 is located in Northwest Georgia. It includes 17 counties. We have the major interstates of I-20, I-75, I-575, as well as what I like to call Georgia's forgotten interstates way up in Dade County. That's I-24 and I-59. In the southern part of our district, we have the suburbs of Atlanta. In the north part, we have the suburbs of Chattanooga. In the middle, we have the carpet capital of the world, the city of Dalton, where over 90% of the world's functional carpet is produced within a 65-mile radius of that city. The district includes 155 centerline miles of interstates and 1,888 centerline miles of state routes. Our area of the state has a population of just over 1.3 million people. So the board has often provided updates on employment data for GDOT, but I wanted to take a moment and just drill a little deeper into the data for District 6. This chart is a pie chart with the employee tenure from 2010. So that's the amount of time that an employee has worked for GDOT. In 2010, there were 27% of staff with 0 to 5 years experience, 26% with 6 to 10 years, 15% with 11 to 15 years, 12% with 21 to 25 years, and 8% with more than 25 years. This next chart shows our current distribution. As you can see, the big change is the percentage of staff that have 0 to 5 years experience. It's increased from 27% in 2010 to 44% today. Also important to note the overall head count for the district. In 2010, we were at 378 employees, and now we're at 288. That leaves us today with currently 81 positions vacant in the district. That we're working hard to fill those positions, but this reality of a lower staff count with less experience has made it necessary for us to change the way we onboard and train our new employees. So I want to share some of our process improvements that we've made to better train and onboard those employees. First, we fully transitioned to an online new employee orientation. Before, we would bring in each employee for a day and a half of presentations and paperwork, but now when we hire someone, we provide them a link to our videos. And it's not uncommon for somebody to report to work on the first day, having already watched those videos. They sign a few forms and they're off to their new job. It's also beneficial for those employees to be able to go back and review those videos for any key parts that they need to see. We've also figured out how to use Microsoft Teams to conduct virtual interviews. That's a time savings, but of course it's been necessary due to the pandemic. We've improved our commercial driver's license training program, which is especially important for District 6 because our minimum head count is based off the number of plow operators we need for winter weather. And all of those plow operators are required to have at least a Class B CDL. We've hired a full-time CDL trainer, and we formalized that CDL training program. In the past 2 years, we've helped 58 employees gain their commercial driver's license. Additionally, if you look at the picture on the bottom right, you will see that we will soon have a Class A approved testing track in the district. Now, this is important because employees will no longer have to drive to Thomaston to complete their CDL test, and they're now going to be able to use the same equipment that they practiced with. And finally, we've established a training and testing program for our maintenance employees, the first step of which is boot camp. And I'd like to go in a little more detail about our boot camp. It's designed to introduce GDOT employees to policies, procedures, and equipment. It incorporates hands-on and classroom training. We began holding the boot camp in August of 2018, and so far there have been 78 employees to complete the training. The hands-on training consists of the operation of many types of equipment, including a single-axle dump truck, an excavator, skid steer, and chainsaw safety. The classroom training introduces new employees to the required personal protective equipment, such as a hard hat and vest, defensive driving, traffic control and flagging operations, and preventative maintenance for vehicles and equipment. All right, now I want to move into some of the accomplishments in District 6 and kind of step through as you would in the life cycle of a roadway. We'll begin with the activities in our pre-construction office. This is the office that gets our projects ready for letting, starting with our design team, which is made up of 10 engineers. During fiscal year 21, they completed 4 concept team meetings, 12 field plan reviews, inspections, and submitted 7 projects for letting. Our right-of-way team has 15 people, and they acquired 148 parcels during fiscal year 21, which equates to about 30 acres of property. They also certified 13 projects for letting. And last but not least, our survey team has 8 members. They surveyed 122 acres, staked 6 miles of right-of-way, and 2.5 miles of bridges. In addition, they completed numerous survey requests throughout the year. I would like to go into detail on one project that we're particularly proud of in District 6. That's the Cass White Interchange with I-75 in Bartow County, and that one was designed at the district. This interchange will be open with a single-lane roundabout on each ramp, and the project was designed to retain the existing overpass bridge. It will replace the existing traffic signals that do not operate very well due to the lack of the left turn lanes with the narrow overpass bridge. This interchange has a heavy truck volume and has a recurring rutting problem with the asphalt pavement. In fact, Budweiser has a plant near this interchange, and they reported to us in previous meetings that they break more bottles in this interchange than anywhere else in the state. So part of this project will replace that asphalt pavement with the rutting issues with concrete pavement that's going to be able to better withstand that heavy truck traffic. The project was let to construction in July and will be getting underway soon. Now I'd like to transition over to our construction side of the house. This chart shows our active construction projects by improvement type. The largest category is reconstruction, rehabilitation, and maintenance. District 6 averaged $518 million of active construction projects during FY21. We completed 29 projects, and 13 of those were major projects open to traffic. So I want to highlight a few of our construction projects. The first one is the State Route 92 widening from Malone Road in Douglas County to Nebo Road in Paulden County. The project is currently 38% complete with a current completion date of July 2022. The contractor is C.W. Matthews, and they're currently preparing to shift traffic so they can make some big grade changes along the roadway. Some areas of the road are seeing the elevation raised by over 10 feet. This can be a very complex activity while maintaining access to adjacent properties and intersections. You can see the picture on the right shows some of the substantial but temporary shoring that's required to maintain access to a subdivision. Here's some additional photos from State Route 92. Much of the work so far has been to construct the new bridges. Traffic has actually been shifted onto the completed phases of the bridges over Gothard's Creek and Sweetwater Creek. On the picture on the right, you can also see some completed sound wall. In this final alignment, State Route 92 will be multi-lane divided highway with 3 new bridges. The next project I want to highlight is the Old Alabama widening from State Route 113 to Pegamine Road. This project includes bridges over Rowell Ward and Pumpkin Vine Creek and will tie into the recently widened roadways on each end of the project. The completed project will be a 4-lane rural facility with a 44-foot depressed grass median. The picture on the left shows some staging for the bridge construction over Pumpkin Vine Creek. The picture on the right shows the largest cut section on the project, and I'll tell you, that picture just does not do it justice. That construction equipment is on a hill 170 feet above the roadway, and they've got to bring it down to grade for the widening. So that's truly what's meant by the term heavy civil construction. This is the largest cut section I've ever worked on. Once completed, this roadway will carry State Route 113 and serve as a truck bypass route for the city of Cartersville. The current completion date is October 2024. The final project I'd like to go into detail on was actually constructed in two separate phases. The first being a new interchange on I-75 at exit 310. The interchange was open to traffic in November of 2015. The next project completed the South Calhoun bypass and rerouted State Route 53 through the new interchange. It was open to traffic in December of 2020 and includes a 1,000-foot-long bridge over the Western and Atlantic Rail Line, as shown in the picture on the left. The South Calhoun bypass opened the door for economic development in Bartow County. This picture is shown prior to the construction of the new interchange. This is a picture of that interchange today. It's led to a development of about 11 million square feet of industrial space. The next picture is looking back to the east side of the interchange, where there's recently been a Love's truck stop and a Buc-ee's. They opened their second location in Georgia at this interchange. Working for a department that's primary funding source is the gas tax, it's great to see facilities go in that sell so much fuel. Buc-ee's alone has 120 fueling stations. This project is proof positive that transportation improvements can drive economic development. Now I want to move over to our maintenance office and talk about some of their recent accomplishments. The first project is in Catoosa County on US 41 in downtown Ringgold. Over the years, we had some minor drainage issues here. We would see water come up through the pavement for about a day after a rain event, but that continued to get worse, and we were seeing water coming up through the pavement for multiple days after a rain event, and it had begun to pop up our cold patches in the roadway. So we knew there was a concrete base, and we decided to mill off the existing asphalt to determine where our concrete slabs had failed. But what we saw is all of the slabs were completely shattered. We knew we had to remove that base, and when we did that, we found out that it was sitting directly on subgrade, and that subgrade was poor and was pumping water. So we installed under drains in the subgrade. We installed a rock base and then reconstructed the concrete slabs, and then did an asphalt overlay. You can see the completed picture on the bottom right. This was the largest amount of concrete that District 6 maintenance has ever used in a single job. Next, we have State Route 341 in Walker County. This job started with a pothole. It was right in front of the high school in downtown and about 400 feet away from a natural spring. After a quick investigation of that pothole, we discovered there was a collapsed section of terracotta pipe, and we were going to have to replace this whole run of pipe. So we knew we would have to dig up the road, and we had to close the route. Once we had dug up the road, we found out there was some utility conflicts from some of the city utilities that they would have to be adjusted. And we had to work with subject matter experts from our materials office and environmental services to determine a repair method that wouldn't compromise the flow of that natural spring. We utilized ground penetrating radar to identify a few additional voids in the area that we wanted to repair while the road was closed. And in the end, we improved the drainage system, we filled voids, and we even worked with the city to improve their utilities and remove some fixed objects on the roadside. In the end, the road reopened better before, and the repairs took about 2 weeks. Of course, you can't discuss the North Georgia mountains without talking about winter weather. Last winter, we had a total of 10 winter inclement weather events, 3 of those being large response efforts that required a special project number. Our largest response occurred on Christmas Eve and into Christmas Day, and we had to bring up additional staff from South Georgia to aid in the response. It seemed like these events got into a weekly pattern, and our staff were working almost every weekend in January and February during last season. During fiscal year 21, we used over 540,000 gallons of brine, over 5,200 tons of salt, 1,250 tons of stone, and over 17,000 pounds of calcium chloride. This represents a cost to the district of nearly $1.5 million. Each year we try to make improvements in our capability, and this year we're adding a third brine production site in Pickens County. In addition to taking care of our state routes, our maintenance staff are often called to help with resource requests from GEMA. This year, our people have assisted with storm cleanup from tornadoes in Catoosa, Dade, Murray, Polk, and Walker counties. They have set up and staffed mass testing and mass vaccination sites. They have hauled medical supplies. They have established traffic control at state parks when attendance spiked last year. And when the city of Somerville had issues with their water system, we even transported drinking water to them. Our maintenance staff are the true heroes of the department, and they're always willing to do whatever we ask of them. The other side of our maintenance office is where we get contractors to help take care of our system. In fiscal year 21, we issued 35 invitation to bid contracts worth about $10 million. We also issued 4 rapid maintenance response contracts worth $600,000. The types of work that we get our contractors to do are things like the picture shown on the lower left, which is vegetation management in Floyd and Bartow County along US 411. We also get contractors to refresh our short line striping, like the hatching and crosswalks shown in the lower right picture. In the upper picture, you can see a pipe relining, and this is critical for taking care of metal pipes. With metal pipes, it's not if, but when they will fail, but you can extend the life of the pipe if you catch it at the right time before it's deflected or structurally failed. Using funds provided to maintenance by House Bill 170, contract resources have become an important part of taking care of what we have, and it's allowing us to catch up on our deferred maintenance. Now moving over to the operations side of the district, I'd like to discuss our progress towards deploying flashing yellow arrows. The flashing yellow arrows are used to more clearly communicate when a driver can make a permissive left turn after yielding to oncoming traffic. They replaced the old standard, the 5-section head that only had green and yellow arrows. The flashing yellow arrow was introduced in Georgia just over 10 years ago, and now we have a mixture of both the old and new styles throughout the state. In District 6, we've completed the conversion of 252 of our 592 signalized intersections, and we have 204 locations left to convert. That places us about 55% complete. We've developed a plan that will convert all except for 27 locations over the next 2 years using a combination of safety upgrade, widening and reconstruction projects, and the signal maintenance program. I'm looking forward to a day that we can get back to just one way to communicate to drivers when it's okay to make a permissive left turn. Now I'd like to discuss our quick response projects for fiscal year 21. As a reminder, quick response projects must be less than $200,000, but we are able to deliver those projects in a much shorter time frame. In fiscal year 21, we delivered 36 projects totaling $4.5 million. The chart shows the contract value by improvement type. We continued an effort to install right turn lanes and extend left turn lanes along our high-speed divided highways, which is why you see groups of projects along State Route 61 in Carroll County, US 278 in Paulden and Polk counties, and State Route 515 in Pickens County. This program is the fastest way to get from ideas to something you can actually drive on, and the projects typically deliver a big bang for a small investment. One project I want to highlight is State Route 61 at Pumpkintown Road in Carroll County. This is about the most complex type of project possible for this program. We had to partner with the city of Villa Rica to move some utility lines that were in conflict with the project. Previously, the intersection was controlled with an all-way stop, and we would see backups at the intersection that routinely reached a half a mile, sometimes up to a mile. And since the quick response project, the backups have been minimal, as you can see from the comments we copied from Facebook. At this location, we selected a mini roundabout to minimize the intersection size and cost, and our delay studies have shown that we've reduced the delay here by 83% at the intersection, improving from a level of service F to a level of service B. Lastly, I'd like to update you on our efforts to improve safety in District 6 through the use of reduced conflict U-turns, or R-cuts for short. As a quick reminder, R-cuts are a method to modify median openings so that you can still turn left from the main line, but from the side street you must turn right, and to complete a left or straight through maneuver you have to do a U-turn. Sam Harris talked to you last month, and he mentioned that this was an effective tool for reducing conflicts and improving safety along our divided highways. And Sam was absolutely correct when he stated the huge reduction in angle crashes when an R-cut's installed. In District 6, we have seen an 84% decrease in angle crashes after installing these types of intersections at high crash locations. We've installed 8 at the district, and it's resulted in a 57-to-1 benefit cost ratio. Now, a good safety in project has a 5-to-1 benefit cost ratio, so this result's just simply off the charts. Now, it's true that when we propose an R-cut, we do typically get some resistance to the idea. But I'll tell you, once the intersection is operational, people quickly realize that the short distance down to the U-turn is not as bad as they expected, and the reduction in crashes speaks for itself. In the district, we have 5 additional R-cuts approved, 2 in Bartow County at State Route 140 and Eagle Parkway, at US 411 and Macedonia Road, 1 at Polk County at US 278 and Barber Road, and 2 in Carroll County at US 27 at Price Creek Road and State Route 61 at Dock Hyde Road. Members of the board, this completes my presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share an update on our activities. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Grant. Any questions or comments? Mr. Lewis?
I just want to make a comment, Ms. Chair, to echo some of your comments. Grant in District 6 does an outstanding job. We're very thankful and blessed to have him up there, Commissioner, and I don't have to worry about Grant returning my phone call because he always answers it the first time. I don't think I've ever had to leave a message for him to call me back, but I just want to emphasize the great work he's done. It's very noticeable up there among the local governments throughout my area of District 6. And I, of course, want to give a shout out to Paul Denard in District 7 because part of my district reaches down there, and I can say the same for him as well. So we have great district engineers, Commissioner, and thank you for that. Thank you, Grant.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I concur. So thank you, Grant. That was a very good report. And thank your team for all the good work they do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner?
Good morning. Maybe it's feeling a little bit like almost good afternoon, but it's been a robust meeting with a lot of good topics. Let me start a little differently than I normally do. And I just want to bring you up to speed on the notice I gave you on Tuesday or yesterday morning based on a construction incident that happened on Tuesday around 5:30 p.m. on State Route 12 in Newton County, the access road bridge, which is parallel to I-20 in the Almond area, if you know that part of Newton County. Regrettably, there was a construction incident in a construction project where the bridge was already closed to traffic. As a project that we have to replace that bridge that was originally constructed in 1937. Our contractor there is Georgia Bridge and Concrete, and they and their subcontractor B&D Concrete Cutting Incorporated were underway of trying to demolish and take preparatory methods to demolish the bridge. Regrettably, there was an incident of where the bridge span over the river collapsed, and 3 of their employees were severely injured, at which time 1 did pass away after being transported. This incident, of course, is continued to be under investigation to understand why this happened, but just wanted to share that with you, and also just take a moment of silence for Demario Battle from B&D Concrete Cutting was the gentleman who lost his life. We'll just give a moment of silence for him, please. Thank you. Let me begin with our normal type updates, starting with transportation fund collections for the month of September. Our collections totaled $190.34 million. The breakdown on that was $174 million in excise, $15.997, probably should just say $16 million of transportation fees. As that brings our fiscal year to date total collections to $558.4 million, of which $506 million is excise, $51.8 million in transportation fees. As compared to year-to-date a year ago, we are $59.72 million ahead of that time, and if we transition all the way back to September 2020, we're about $39.4 million ahead. So obviously the pandemic has transcended over a year, almost 2 years now, the impacts, but we're seeing a positive number on revenue. For comparison, from September this year to September last year, excise was 9.1% ahead, hotel fees 37.5% ahead. If you compare this year, fiscal year, back to the previous fiscal year to date, excise is tracking about 9.4% ahead, hotel fees 50.3% ahead, and impact fees, transportation impact fees about 12% ahead. So you can see, obviously, transportation and people are out and about, so those are positive signs. Also, while I'm talking about funding, let me just remind you that we stood before you last month and talked about the IIJA, the transportation reauthorization at the federal level. As you probably know, that vote did not happen. Congress passed a continuing resolution of the current Transportation Funding Act, the FAST Act, for 30 days. And so that will expire at the end of this month. I'll remind you that when Congress does continuing resolutions, you get a daily pro rata share of your funding. So we got 3/65 of funding. I believe, Angela, that's about $90 million. So we had about $90 million to operate on, and you saw Albert's letting list. We'll consume that pretty quick. We will continue to keep you updated, and we'll see as Congress reconvenes and as they work through the end of this month to see what happens as it relates to reauthorization. But we'll just keep you posted. Let me give you our employment data updates. Going back to closing out last month, 3,580 regular full-time staff. You saw Grant's presentation and his, I guess, right at 90 to 90, almost 100 less staff than he had some almost 10 years ago. We have 56 temporary maintenance staff on board. Last month, we hired 73 new employees and had 65 employees separate from service. So, again, we're still hovering there at 3,500, most 3,600 employees and trying to get more people here in the door at GDOT. Let me move now to our procurement report. Last month, we had 195 contracts executed, valued at $47.5 million for professional services. That brings fiscal year to date to 566 contracts valued at $245.6 million. So all the preparatory work it takes to get to, for you guys to approve a letting is a lot of work, and we're still doing well there. Now let me move into some projects that opened to traffic since we were together last time. And we'll start in Congressional District 4 in Dekalb County, which is also GDOT's District 7, focused on an operational and safety project. This project consists of a single-lane roundabout and pedestrian-activated beacons at State Route 212, which is also known as Browns Mill Road, and at Salem Road. The contractor was CMES Incorporated. This beautiful roundabout opened up on September 25th. It represents a $6.27 million investment. We said it's single lane, but you can see the single lanes, but as you get to the roundabout, you have some options so that you can navigate through the roundabout a little more efficiently. So there's actually 2 lanes through the roundabout in one direction. Great operational and safety improvement, including the focus on the pedestrian crossings you may see there with the beacons so that people can be aware of pedestrians. Let me move to the next project over in Congressional District 12 in Richmond County, GDOT District 2. This project consists of construction of a bridge on State Route 4, which is also US 1 over South Prawn Creek. The contractor was United Infrastructure Group, finished up and opened on September 24th, representing a $3.5 million capital investment for this bridge replacement.
And you can see our project manager, Sam Adams, standing there in the photo, proud of his bridge, as he should be. Let me move into Congressional District 13 in Douglas County, GDOT District 7. And this actually is 6 bridge projects or rehabilitations that include jacking the bridges, which means raising them up, doing deck preservation, strengthening the supports that the beams sit on, and then painting steel bridges at 6 locations throughout Douglas County. The contractor was Gibson and Associates Incorporated. I certainly want to thank the good folks for Douglas County. We had to close many of these overpass bridges to accomplish this work, so we thank them for their patience. This represents a $7.2 million capital maintenance investment that will certainly prolong the life of these bridges before we have to replace them. This project was opened to traffic almost a month ahead of schedule and came in under budget. So those are 2 of my favorite words. And there's a picture of some of the work being done. Let me move into Congressional District 14 up in Grant District here in District 6, Whitfield County, another capital bridge maintenance project on I-75 over Swamp Creek. Same kind of thing, deck rehabilitation, joint replacement, painting and epoxy injection, a spall repair, and basically modernizing the bridge and giving us a much more longer life out of it. The contractor was Comanche Construction of Georgia. Open to traffic on September 21st. OAP represents a $2.5 million capital maintenance investment. So those are just a few of the projects that opened up that I wanted to highlight. As always, I always like to inform you of what's going on with our staff and good things. And so I'm pleased to announce and introduce you today to Clement Solomon, our new Intermodal Division Director. Carroll just gave her final presentation to you. And I told Carroll the other day that when she retires, she's not riding off into the sunset very slowly. I said she's going out on a rocket, and maybe it's more like a twin turboprop, Carroll. So anyway, Clement is here today. Clement, if you'd stand up, I'm going to talk about you just for a moment, and so people know who you are. Clement has an extensive background in transit and program administration with over 25 years of cross-functional experience. He's held various positions as the Director of Transportation and Parking, Director of Sustainability, Senior Associate to the Vice President, and a Senior Engineering Scientist. Clement has an international standards organization, which is also called ISO 14000, which is a lead auditor certification. He strategically directed agency safety plans and compliance with the Transportation MAP 21 bill, overseeing complex personal rapid transit at West Virginia University, where they have a one-of-a-kind personal rapid transit system. He's led technology assignments and completed transit asset management plans, as well as capital and maintenance projects. He possesses a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineers, a master's in civil and environmental engineering, and a doctorate in resource management and sustainable development. He's authored and co-authored over 60 publications as well, so well-written and well-read. Please join me in welcoming Clement here to the Georgia DOT. As I say, Carroll, he is filling Carroll's position, but we are not replacing Carroll. That's not possible. So, Clement, you've got big shoes to fill, and we're glad to have you on board. Well, you can't get to project announcements of completion unless you start with a groundbreaking. So let's highlight a few groundbreakings. We'll start with the Effingham County Parkway groundbreaking. You can see our board member, Ann Purcell, there joined Effingham County officials and other state legislatures for the groundbreaking ceremony for the new Effingham County Parkway project just outside of Rincon. The Effingham County project was sponsored by Effingham County. It constructs a new 6-mile, 2-lane roadway with 6 new bridges, which will extend from State Route 30 down near Chatham County up to Blue Jay Road in Effingham County. And again, part of this project reaches into Chatham County as well. The new parkway would give commuters some alternative routes from the Springfield area down into Savannah
and it certainly provides opportunity for the industrial development area, as Grant showed you in his interstate slide. This project goes through an industrial development area that will certainly help freight and logistics movement in this area and provide some parallel relief to State Route 21. GDOT's proud to be a big supporter of this project in the fact that we contributed $44 million to basically a $57 million project for the importance of this corridor in Effingham County. The project is scheduled for completion in 2025, so we have to be patient, and it certainly will help move traffic, ease congestion, improve travel times, and of course, always safety and operational efficiency. So congratulations, Ann, and to the Effingham County for this great project, and certainly the program delivery for shepherding this project ahead to get to this point. Another groundbreaking held on October 4th was for the Albany Transportation Center. This is a very unique opportunity. This transportation center will have charging stations, wireless internet access, community meeting rooms, computer access, and is also expected to serve over 650,000 passengers through the transit there in the city of Albany. The GDOT transit program is responsible for ensuring that subrecipients like the city of Albany and third-party contractors and leasees adhere to all applicable federal and state regulations pertaining to public transit. GDOT develops and implements effective systems of monitoring and ensuring compliance of all the statutory and program requirements. This is just another great example of a project that will positively improve the community and provide more transportation options for the good folks in Albany and Daugherty County. So that's a great opportunity to have that done too. All right, this is like the groundbreaking month. My final groundbreaking to talk about is Acres Mill Road Northwest Corridor Express Lane ramp groundbreaking that was just held last week. The Cumberland Community Improvement District, in collaboration with GDOT, held a groundbreaking just last week. Actually held the groundbreaking on the bridge over I-75, so that was sort of unique. I was glad to have Stacy Key and Kevin Abel to be able to participate at the ceremony, as well as the governor providing comments you can see there, as well as Congresswoman Lucy McBath. So just like the other access points along the Northwest Corridor Express lanes, this ramp will have gates and will provide access from the Acres Mill overpass directly into the express lane. We call this phase two, this project, because phase one was actually where we modified our design and construction when the Northwest Corridor Express lanes were built to accommodate this. We knew this would happen at some point, so we made the modifications there. This second phase, or building those ramps, constitute about an $18.2 million investment, and also there was a USDOT grant, infra grant for this project as well as funding participation from the CID, Cobb County, GDOT, INSERTA through the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. So a multitude of fund sources, great partnership. It was certainly a pleasure to be able to be there and talk about those great partnerships to see this project to fruition now. So pay attention as you drive through there. There will be some active construction going on. So let me conclude with, I know that several of you have commented to me recently about wildflowers across the state and how beautiful they are. And I think we've just had the perfect weather, not only in a region, but statewide, which certainly has made the public aware of how beautiful the wildflowers are. So I'm really excited for this last update with you. And it's really a partnership now with GDOT and the Georgia Association of Conservation Districts to install pollinator habitat sites at our 15 rest areas and welcome centers across the state. The goal of this partnership is to educate Georgians on the important roles pollinators play in Georgia agriculture, while also providing GDOT with a unique opportunity to create a safe and beautiful place for families and travelers to get some rest or pull off the road while they visit our rest areas and welcome centers. We will have educational signs and brochures like what you see on the screen
placed at these habitat locations so that people can educate themselves on the importance of pollinators, again, for Georgia's agriculture, our number one economy, agribusiness. So, wow, I got sound effects. Cool. The Georgia Association of Conservation Districts received grant funds from the National Resource Conservation Service to install these pollinator habitats and promote further establishment of such gardens by landowners throughout the site. So the Association of Conservation Districts will provide the funding to GDOT's Roadside Enhancement and Beautification Fund, and the department will install and maintain these pollinator gardens. So these plantings are going to start very soon, so travelers can begin to see some foliage hopefully very soon as well. And I just, again, want to say how proud I am for our team for looking for these innovative ways and partnerships that are non-traditional that really enhance the traveler's experience through Georgia and provide an educational opportunity as well. Madam Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'd be glad to entertain any questions or comments.
Are there any questions? That was a very good report, and thank you for that. A lot of great information. As part of today's proceedings, as the commissioners already noted, I want to make note of the fact we will soon bid a fond farewell to GDOT's Director of Intermodal, Carroll Comer. Carroll, would you stand? And you can come to the podium if you would like. She's a little shy today, but she's retiring at the end of this month after an illustrious 24-year career. I want to tell you, Carroll was one of the very first people that I dealt with it when I became part of the Transportation Board. I had a constituent who was very colorful, passionate, and a person who had a strong opinion about railroad crossings, and it was really a very good testimony to Carol's good demeanor, patience, and professionalism as she dealt with this constituent over several months. I have a feeling she had a lot of experience in that and has used it even since then, and because that was 10 years ago. But Carol, we want to thank you for your service. We have a resolution that we did prepare. It was emailed to each of you. We're not going to read it today, but Carol, we appreciate the work you've done. That's a long time. I hope you've got an exciting plan coming up. So would you like to say anything?
I would just say thank you to the board, to the commissioner, to Meg, and and to all the employees at DOT. I had such a rich and rewarding career, and I couldn't have scripted a more perfect one, so thank you.
Carol, you're a special person, and we appreciate you. With that, do we have any new business? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We would, at this time, we do need to have a motion to approve the resolution for Carol. Do we have a second? All in favor? Thank you so much. Okay, at this time, do we have any new business? If none, then we're adjourned. Thank you.